Welcome back to another episode of ROC Boys Football, continuing with our 2022 season previews. As we look at one of our favorite teams heading into this 2022 season, they were one of our favorite teams last year. They had a phenomenal year, and they're bringing back almost everybody to a team in 2022 that is expected to be very good, and that's the NC State Wolfpack. Before we get into it, just wanted to say thank you guys for the support you guys have shown the channel. It has been a blast talking football with you guys in the comment section. We've been learning a lot from your guys' comments about your guys' teams, and we appreciate the support. If you do like the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Dill, I'm going to kick it off to you. This team starts with their all-ACC quarterback in Devin Leary. What do you like so much about Devin Lear and how this offense runs?
Devin Leary, I for the life of me, I don't get why people don't give him more respect, because I think of quarterbacks coming back right now, there's definitely not five I would take over him, and I think you could argue he is right in the mix for that number 3 spot besides the top two, who in Young and Stroud, who are obviously better than him. But otherwise, like, a really good player. I think he moves really well in the pocket, doesn't take a ton of sacks, even with an offensive line last year that I wouldn't say was wildly consistent.
That offensive line, sorry to interrupt you, that should have been a better unit than I thought for NC State last year. Like a Kevin Kwanu, Grant Gibson, I felt like it didn't really reach its full potential. Sorry, continue about Devin Leary.
But yeah, just like even despite all that, it seemed like he doesn't miss throws that he shouldn't miss. I think he can make more throws than people think he can. So just a really solid player who I think is a winner, who won him a lot of football games. And yeah, I don't know. I think game manager is sometimes used as like an offensive word, but it's like he manages the football games really well for NC State, and they won a lot of games with him.
I'll tell you the reason why he doesn't get enough traction in the NFL is because those nerds are just looking at like big arms, big bodies, and they don't really have much respect for the guys who just win football games and are really, really good. Devin Lear, you mentioned it, completes the passes he needs to make, only 5 interceptions last year, takes care of the football, and he just moves the chains. And that's not sexy, and that's not going to get the attention of the national media scouts. But he is one of the best football players in the ACC. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the country. Now, where this offense looked a little different, now we were very high on this NC State team last year, and that was partially because I thought they were going to run the ball extremely well with Ricky Pearson, Zonovan Knight, behind guys like Grant Gibson and Kevin Kwanu. They didn't necessarily run the ball that efficiently or that well as I thought they were going to, and they relied a lot on Devin Leary. I want to talk about the pass catchers. We know what we have in Devin Leary, but what are the pass catchers? You're losing to Emeka Mezi, who is an absolute stud. We both really liked him in the 2022 NFL draft. Who are the wide receivers that you think are going to step up for this team?
So I think the obvious answer is Devin Carter, and he's got to have a big year. And he, I think, brings probably a little bit more home run play to the field than Emeka Mezi, who is more of a, I mean, what is he, like almost 6'5", probably close to 230 pounds, just a big-bodied wideout. And Devin Carter's big, too. I think he's 6'4". He just weighs a little less. But a guy who was getting deep. I think you saw him get vertical on Clemson pretty well at times. So a guy you think is probably going to need to step into that number 1 role. And then obviously a Thomas Thayer, or Thayer Thomas, I should say, is just a really steady slot guy, probably not going to break your offense. And the guy who I want to see play really well is Porter Rooks. I think had some moments as a freshman that looked really good. And he looks like a guy who can be more of a game breaker, more of a, let's say, a high-level contributor, both from the slot and maybe even on the outside. I mean, he was doing his work in the slot last year, but I think he has the athleticism in the game to move outside and give him some production. So I think he's the guy I want to see step into a prominent role.
Yeah, it's going to be a challenge replacing Emeka Mezi, but you mentioned it. They got some guys like Devin Carter with a massively high ceiling. Thayer Thomas is just more the consistent guy. They also bring in Daryl Jones from Maryland, who also is a kind of proven commodity that will just add depth to the unit. The running back position is where I'm not necessarily concerned, because the running back play, as good as Ricky Pearson and Zonovan Knight wasn't like that impressive.
The one issue is their offensive line gave them almost no help in almost all the runs that they were able to break off, which, the ball wasn't run well enough by that football team in general. But a lot of it was like just hero ball from one of the two. I mean, That's my concern. Is like the way they blocked, I think almost covers up how I almost want to say like their running game looks better than it should have looked, because those running backs, is not great seasons as they had, they put up with a lot and kind of made the best out of bad situation a lot in my mind.
I think what happened with that run game and why on paper it might not look as efficient as it was I think a lot of those teams thought NC State would try to run the ball, which they did. And that's why Devin Leary and the wide receivers had so much success through the air. You're seeing a lot of loaded boxes because the scouting report coming in to the 2021 season was this team's going to pound the rock on you guys with 2 NFL level caliber backs with Ricky Pearson and Zonovan Knight. It wasn't that efficient, but they kept going to it. But that allowed Devin Leary to really go to work through the air. I want to talk a little about this offensive line because we noted it's just a little bit of an underachievement. Kevin Kwanu was great at left tackle, an absolute road grader, top 3 pick, deserved to be a top 3 pick, great in pass route. The rest of those guys I liked coming into the year. A guy like Grant Gibson was one of my favorite centers coming into the season and wasn't as good as I thought he would be, and that's why he's coming back. And you hope this offensive line, whoever it might shuffle out to be at left tackle and in the interior, takes a step forward because I want to see them run the ball a little bit more efficiently.
And the thing is, they have some pieces. Like I thought Dylan McMahon for a younger player looked really good. If he can just get a little bigger, a little more physical, like a guy who seems like he could, like guys who were like tough against Clemson, tough against the Brian Brazies of the world. So I don't know. Even Bryson Speece looked pretty good, I would thought, at right tackle. They were subbing him in and out with Timothy McKay, which I don't get why any offensive lines do that. Like play your 5 and play him every snap. I don't know what the deal was with their coaching, but a unit that you just feel like should be able to play better football than it did.
And
even though they're losing.
That's kind of the bright spot of this team has a lot of potential on that offense line, and if they play better, NC State's a funny team because I've seen media rank them in the top 5 of the country. I've seen top 10, I've seen top 15, and I've seen outside of the top 15. A lot of people don't really know where they stand on this team, and it could be one of the dark horses to win the ACC. The strength of this team, though, as good as Devin Leary is, as high potential as some of those wide receivers have, it's going to be on the defense. And I'm going to start – we normally start with the defensive line, but I'm going to start with those linebackers because this was why I loved NC State so much last year. Guys like Peyton Wilson, who just hasn't stayed healthy, got hurt last year. Drake Thomas was probably my least favorite linebacker out of the group. And for the – I don't want to use the word casuals, but for people who don't watch college football that closely, Isaiah Moore might not be a name you know. I thought he was the best linebacker out of the group in 2020 during the COVID year. And this dude was an absolute stud. You got 3 linebackers that you feel really, really good about.
I mean, they have 3 legit kind of pros. Like, I think even Drake Thomas should be a pro. I mean, at the least could play special teams, but the way he played last year makes me think he can be a legit pro linebacker.
Yeah, they're absolutely loaded. And on the defensive line, we want to see a little bit more negative plays from them. They were really relying on Joseph to make some plays for them. But they have guys that you really like coming back. Corey Durden was one of them. Devin Van is another guy who had 5 sacks last year. Those guys need to step up and create some havoc on the defensive line. Are there any other guys that you really liked up there front?
Yeah, the thing about their defensive line is they do kind of use it as a means of getting the linebackers loose because they play the 3 down, which I think is not ever conducive to having a ton of stats as D linemen. So I think they're mainly the way they're going to have to rush passers and make negative plays is by using their linebackers on blitzes and having them play aggressive. And yeah, again, I think what their defensive line is going to be asked to do is not get moved around and keep their linebackers free, which frankly I feel like they did last year because the linebackers made a lot of plays. So that's probably going to be the story of their defense. I don't think they're going to rely on anyone on defensive line to be a game wrecker like Clemson does. Like they want their D linemen to be in the backfield making plays. I just don't see that and I don't think they have the talent either to do it that way.
NC State's defense relies a lot on those backers to make those negative plays, those sacks, those tackles for a loss. Looking at the secondary, For me, it starts with Tanner Engel. I don't even Tasmanian devil, you might call him. He's low-key an absolute lunatic on the football field. I believe he got kicked out of like 3 games for targeting. He plays the game fast and he plays the game hard. And he's kind of the leader of that NC State defense, especially in the back end. This dude gets his hands on footballs. He's very, very physical, and he's a great tackler.
Yep, and in a big secondary, if you look across the board. I mean, even Tyler Baker-Williams in the nickels over 6 feet tall. So you got big 6 foot tall corners across the board. And the problem is this unit had like flashes of being really good. Like if you watch the Mississippi State game, you're like, there was no space on the field. Everything was covered up. And then you turn the Wake Forest game on, and it's wildly different. Like Wake Forest could pretty much throw when they wanted. It looked like there was maybe like 10 defensive players on the field. So this is a unit that at their peak it looked really good, and I think can be really good. The one caveat is for the Wake game is I think they were missing all their linebackers. So it's like that throws a monkey wrench in what they're doing naturally, just because what you said, they're very reliant on them. So I think this unit can be really good if they can. Again, I think the crux of the issue is stay healthy at the linebacker spot.
Yeah.
Because those 3 weren't on the field enough, especially Moore and Wilson.
Drake Thomas, again, I noted he was my least favorite. He was a freak last year. He was phenomenal. So let's take a look at the schedule. I like the schedule and how it sets up. East Carolina is a game that you need to watch out for. I mean, NC State will be multiple touch, probably 14.5-point favorites if I had to set the line. I don't know what it is. But that's a tough place to play. You saw South Carolina go in there last year and get pushed. Charleston Southern should be pretty easy. Texas Tech is I'm high on Texas Tech, but they're not beating NC State. UConn, and then hopefully you go undefeated and you're rolling into Clemson as a top 8 team on the road, and hopefully some magic happens like it did last year.
I mean, Clemson, you're giving too much credit for, because like if their quarterback play doesn't get infinitesimally better, they're going to be in trouble again against this NC State team, who I think can physically match with them. Not like beat them straight up, but if Clemson doesn't bring the skill, NC State's not going to get railroaded physically. That's for sure.
Yeah, Florida State, they get them at home. Syracuse, Virginia Tech, Wake Forest, probably a little revenge game. I mean, if that game went for 10 more minutes, they probably beat Wake Forest there. They get them at home. Boston College, Louisville, UNC. There is probably one game on this schedule that NC State's
they're going to be dogs. Yeah.
And then I think every single game I would probably pick NC State to come out on top. This could be a really, really special year for NC State, and that Clemson game is going to be massive. You want to go win an ACC championship, it's going to go through Clemson. You need to beat Clemson on the road. That's going to be a game that everyone has circled. It's probably going to be a battle of 2 top 8 teams in the country. Very excited for that game.
I mean, you're really disappointed if you don't go 9-3. I think as NC State. I don't even think 9. I think you want to go 10-2. Frankly, feels like the target of a really good season. 9-3 isn't bad, but if you go much less than 9-3, I think you look like we're a better team than that. I think
this is a culmination of Dave Dorn did a phenomenal job recruiting the 2018 and 2019 recruiting classes. They were both top 20 classes. All of them, pretty much all of those guys from that class are playing this year. They're veterans. They've played a lot of football, and this is kind of the culmination of those 2 recruiting classes. And again, NC State, they have every right to be in the top 10, excuse me. They're a very good football team, and I agree with you. 10-2 needs to be the goal. Like that is how good this football team is. That'll do it for our season preview on NC State. Again, we appreciate you guys for rocking with the ROC Boys, checking us out. If you guys do like the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll be back later with more content. Talk to y'all later.